Time now for our daily fuel. And Alex Bowman, the driver of the 48 car, is expected to miss 3 to 4 weeks following a crash at a sprint car race in Iowa Tuesday night, where he suffered a fractured vertebra in his back. So Hendrick Motorsports will request a medical waiver to allow Bowman to remain eligible for the 2023 NASCAR Cup Series playoffs. And junior motorsports driver Josh Berry, he is slated to fill in for the injured Bowman out at Dover this weekend. And as promised, here are Daniel Suarez and Jamie McMurray with me. Great to see the two of you, as always. So I want to start with the news of the week, of course, with Alex Bowman. When you saw that accident that happened out in Iowa, what were you thinking when you saw that?
So initially, when I saw that, I didn't even focus on Alex Bowman. The camera kind of went off to the other guy, and it was obviously a horrific wreck of the red car, and I was focused on that. And then when I saw the news, I went back and watched this clip, and you see Bowman's car goes down and lands and is torn up. But initially, I didn't see that. But without a doubt, this is going to bring up the conversation, not just at Hendrick Motorsports, but across the board at all race teams of what are drivers allowed to do, what series can they go run, and should they do that? What's your comfortability with that, racing other divisions while you're in the midst of your Cup season? What do you think about all of that?
You know, it's a very tricky situation, because I believe that, you know, the more we practice, the better we're going to be, the better we're going to continue to develop, you know, visuals, skills, different set of skills and stuff like that, especially now that we don't have really much practice in the Cup Series, right? I mean, we have a very, very short weekend. So it's good, but the line versus helping you in the Cup Series, that at the end of the day is the main goal, and the risk that you have with that, it can be high. And I say the risk can be high because there is not another series in the United States that takes safety the way that NASCAR does. Period. You know, NASCAR Cup Series put a lot of effort, a lot of people, a lot of money into safety. And there is no one series in the United States that does the same thing. So it's difficult. You know, it's very, very difficult to jump into all these different series expecting the same safety on what we're used to, but it does help. So it's a tricky situation. Yeah, and I, you know, this won't be popular, especially with the sprint car community, but to me, I don't mind if my driver wanted to go run a late model. You know, Kyle Larson does the dirt late models a lot, and I like that. And I think if that helps him on Sunday, or if it gets him out wanting to do some more racing, I'm all for that. To me, the risk versus reward in the sprint cars, we just see a lot of accidents in that. You know, obviously Kyle has not been hurt yet, but to me, it's just a matter of time with the amount of races that he runs before something like that could happen to him. So if I'm a team owner, I don't have a problem with you going and run other races. I just would like for you to stay have an open wheel car. Do you run other races in other divisions, and do you think it benefits you? Has it helped you? You know, I do here and there late models, in Millbridge with a micro that is kind of like a small midget. And I think it helps. With that being said, you know, once in a while I'll see a wreck in Millbridge of, you know, a couple of friends that they just flipped actually a couple of weeks ago, and they show up next day with bruises everywhere, and they say that they saw stars for a few minutes. So, you know, the risk versus reward that Jamie was just talking about, that's the balance, you know, how to put everything on the scale about, okay, is this worth doing? If it is worth doing, how much is worth doing? So I think that is a matter of finding that balance. But I do agree with you, Jamie, that the sprint cars probably are the biggest issue. What's the protocol at Trackhouse? Like, what's Justin say to you guys? Like, they care if you go run other races? They tell you, we'd like for you to stay away from this? What's that conversation like? Listen, I had a conversation with Justin about this last night. For a while, we were on the phone, and he told me, he said, man, we don't want to have someone else in the 99. But I want you to continue to develop as a race car driver. You know, if you want to be better in road course racing, go do some Trans Am races. If you want to be better in short track, go do some late models. If you want to do something better on the wall, go do some dirt. But unfortunately, sprint cars, you know, most of the heavy accidents happen in sprint cars. So he say, as right now, I'm not in the position to tell you, hey, do not do this. But I'm not a big fan for the risk that offers at this point sprint car racing. So this is not the first injury that has sidelined Alex Bowman. He was injured last season, got a concussion after the Texas race. On Monday, he spoke with Josh Sims about that race and his process to come back racing.
So you suffered the concussion last year at the Texas race. So first of all, what was that process like for you, and why did you want to make sure that you came back for the final race of the season instead of just saying, I'll take it into the offseason and be 100% next year?
Yeah, I think the reason I wanted to come back so badly is because I wanted to know that I was going to be okay. Like, I didn't want to sit all off season and wonder about it. I also wanted to race during the off season, and I felt like realistically, if I didn't run a cup race first, it probably wouldn't have looked good if I went sprint car or midget racing before I went cup racing. So, yeah, it was important for me to come back, and I was ready to come back, right? Like, I wouldn't have come back if I wasn't ready. It was interesting watching the 48 every week without me in it, but yeah, definitely glad to be back.
Now, that interview took place on Monday prior to the accident Alex had out in Iowa, prior to his most recent medical condition as well. What did you hear there?
Well, first off, I was thankful when I read the statement from Alex Bowman that he didn't complain about any concussion issues with that wreck. He just talked about his back being hurt. So hopefully there are no issues. We know based on Kurt Busch's accidents that it wasn't necessarily just one hit that has put him out. It was multiple hits over a course of time. It was just in October and November of last year that he had that concussion. So has he had enough time? Hopefully so. The second thing that, and you're going to agree with me on this, that's really hard, I feel like, for fans to process is that these guys that race on Sunday, that's their job, and they love racing, but that's their job, and it's stressful. When they get to go run a sprint car or a dirt late model or other races, you see them, they're so relaxed at those races. Like if you're at Millbridge or the dirt track on a Wednesday night, it's such a different environment for you, and they love racing, they grew up racing, and so that's why they want to go back and be a part of all that.
No, I agree. You know, it's just different. You know, on Sundays, there is so many responsibilities.
The stress, right?
Sponsors, hours and hours of work of many people, manufacturers, so many different responsibilities that there is pressure. You know, you have to perform. And when you are going to Millbridge or racing late models, it's like going for a little run in the park. It's just fun. So it's different. It's different. I'm not saying that it's not fun to race on Sundays. I love it, and I wouldn't change for that for anything. And that's the goal from most people that is racing late models and all these different divisions. But it's just different. And I believe that with the lack of track time that we have right now with the Cup schedule, it opens the opportunity for us to try different things, and that's when, sometimes the risk.
So two things with this. First off, I'm curious to see if the owners change their opinion on how much the drivers, what they get to run and how much they allow them to do that. The second thing you mentioned about racing on Sunday, all the people that put in the work to get there. When you're a driver and you go do something like that, if you get hurt, it doesn't just affect you and your family. It affects everyone within that race team, all the people that have put the time into the partners that are on the car. So as a driver, you have a bigger responsibility sometimes, I think, than what you realize. So
Alex Bowman out of the 48 car for the foreseeable future. How does this impact the playoff picture right now? Take a look at the leaderboard where we stand right now and focusing in on Alex Bowman right there in 12th. You see the season numbers. So once he comes back, there's going to be a lot of ground to make up. What's the mindset you think going to be for him? How does this team approach this, trying to play catch up? Because they already had a points penalty too.
Yeah, I mean, on my opinion, he has to just be very calm. If I was on his position, I would try to focus in recovering. You know, I wouldn't even think about that right now. Trying to recover as quick as possible, trying to make these 3-4 weeks as efficient as possible, because the last thing you want is to come back and be 70%, because the back is very important. You know, the back is very important when it comes to a race car. If you're not strong in your back, it's almost like everything else is not 100%. So he has to be 100%. That's number one. Number two, after that, I mean, they have to win. I don't see another option. And I think they can do it, but to do that, he has to be 100%.
Well, they've run so well this year. Even with the 60-point penalty, they're 9th in points right now. So performance-wise, they've been more than good enough with stage points and everything. It just depends on how many weeks he has to miss. And you brought up a really good point, Daniel. When I think about an injury in the car, the head would be number one on my list. My back would be number two. Because if you think about anyone who's ever hurt their back, you can't wiggle your toes or your fingers without feeling that in your back. And Eric Almirola was on last night and talked about the pain that he went through trying to recover. So I'm with you. I think that hopefully he's only out for 3 weeks, but it could be longer than that.
Yeah, we're continuing to think about Alex Bowman and hoping he recovers.
Hey, race fans, thanks for watching our video. For all NASCAR on Fox News content and the best clips from Fox Sports, be sure to follow and subscribe to our channel.